taking time out of your obviously busy schedule here at E3 to interview us and take a look at the Final Fantasy XIV 2.0.
No problem, we're glad to be here.
First off, we'd like to talk about basically the three main concepts that we are focusing on during the development of Final Fantasy XIV 2.0. The first of these three pillars that we are concentrating on is providing the players with the highest quality of gameplay. And when we say gameplay, it's it can cover so many different topics. And so right now we'll say gameplay, and then we'll break it down a little bit later in the interview on what we mean by gameplay. We believe that Final Fantasy XIV 2.0 can be considered the newest title in the Final Fantasy series. We want to make sure that the story, which is a deep story, is one of the cornerstones of the Final Fantasy franchise, that the story of Final Fantasy XIV 2.0 can meet the expectations that the fans have regarding storyline. And so to support the first two pillars of high quality gameplay and the high quality story, we want to have the highest quality graphics, and that is what we'll build our game around, those three pillars. But before the game, we can say that the game is complete. On top of those three pillars that we've constructed, the gameplay, the graphics, and the storyline, must rest the community, because being an MMORPG, we feel that the community is a very important facet to the game, and until that is established on top of those three pillars, we cannot say that Final Fantasy XIV 2.0 is finished. And so, yes, our main goal in producing both the PEC and the PS3 versions is to complete these pillars and make a solid game to be able to release to the public.
Yeah, so how much are you changing the game from the story-wise from the original to 2.0?
So story-wise, what's going to be different is, in the current version, the story is revolving around the coming of the 7th Umbral Era and what's going to happen to the realm of Eorzea. This will finish before the release of 2.0. This story will come to an end, and so players will find out what's going to happen. When 2.0 is released, there will be a new story starting, and this story will revolve around the invading Garlean Empire and the players having to fight for their, the power of the realm. And we plan this story to continue for the span of 2.0, and it will have a beginning and will come to an end. Also in the coming story, the story will revolve around the summons, which we call primals in Final Fantasy XIV, and you will see new primals entering the game, some that are not even in the current version. Currently we have Ifrit and Garuda. There'll be even more in 2.0, and the story will revolve around this and battling with these new summons, which are very powerful beings in the world. In addition to summons, we will also be focusing on main Final Fantasy staples such as Moogles and Chocobos. More things to give the game that Final Fantasy feel that the players are looking forward to.
In terms of group dynamics and playing with your friends, and then is there anything changing into this version that is going to be like a big paradigm shift rather than like in terms of raids or dungeon things?
Of course, we're always thinking of adding more instance rates, a lot higher level ones for the high-end users. We're also thinking about getting together alliance-type battles that we haven't had in 1.0, with multi-parties forming together one giant alliance to go and take on even bigger enemies. As for solo content, to make solo content even more dynamic is we're going to be implementing a Chocobo raising system where you'll be able to raise a Chocobo not only to ride but also to fight alongside you, and you'll be able to customize it. For example, like you can have a caster Chocobo, you can have a tank Chocobo to meet your playstyle.
So does that mean if you're like a single player, then you can complete most of the game without grouping up with people if you don't want to?
I believe that one of the main themes that you can find throughout the Final Fantasy series is the bonds that the player has with other characters in the game. And this is going to continue on, especially in this Final Fantasy XIV 2.0, which is an MMORPG. It's going to be those bonds that you create with other players around you. And so while we do plan to have most of the content be able to complete solo, towards the end, we want to really focus on these bonds. And so some of the end game content will have to be, we want to design it so that you work with other players and cooperate to complete these grand tasks. However, we understand that the lifestyles that people have don't allow them a lot of time sometimes to find parties and put together parties. So we're going to make sure that the game has implemented what we're going to call a content finder, where players will be able to put in what they want to do, press a button, and it'll automatically match with people from around the world that have like they want to do the same thing, and so they can easily make parties. So they don't have to worry. Expanding a little bit more on the bonds that the players have with other players is that we're going to make sure in Final Fantasy XIV in the battle system that we have an extension of what was done originally on FF11 with the skill chain, the Renkei system, is that we're going to have battle regiments, which we already have in the current version, but we're going to revamp and make new, which is basically party combos where each player works together to create one giant attack, which will, again, like is seen in most of the Final Fantasy series games, have very graphical effects and explosions, lots of damage. But it's about working together with your party to create this.
So, is there anything else in the the previous game that you weren't able to do, and this one you really had the time and the power to put into?
When
he came onto the project, what he felt was that, again, first of all, there wasn't enough to do. There was a lack of content, and as well, the UI was lacking. It was not up to the global standard. So what he's made, his mission for 2.0 is, that you can have the greatest story, the greatest content, the greatest systems in the world, but if you don't have a good user interface that's going to back that up, then that's going to be all for naught. And so he's made it, his mission for 2.0 to basically get a UI that will support all of the things that he wants. Another thing was, with the current system, there was a lot of things that we couldn't do based on the current server system. So we have basically gone through and we have revamped the whole server system that will allow us now to do things that are pretty much standard in MMOs, in other companies' MMOs, such as guild systems, which we call the free company system. Also, matching with players across worlds, not only in your same world, for different content. And so this new server system that we have built is now going to allow us to do these things that we wanted to do in the past.
Is there anything else you're particularly proud of in this version, or this iteration rather, that you just feel everyone's
First of all, what we're really proud of is that we're able to provide users with an MMO, a current generation MMO that provides this type of real-time lighting, real-time shadows, these type of graphics, but in a current generation. On top of that, to have the essence of Final Fantasy with the dynamic battles with summons such as Ifrit, Odin, Shiva, Ramuh, but not having that only by yourself, but like teaming up with people from around the world to have these dynamic battles in this graphically stunning setting. On top of that, things like housing systems or PvP, things that you expect to see in MMOs, all of these new things that we'll be implementing in the game. Really looking forward to see how players react to these new things.
ファイナルファンタジーがこれから新しい展開を迎えるので、そのあたりもぜひ注目してもらえるポイントかなと思います。